What's up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today I want to give a new spin on a very old archetype, and that is Fire Fist. And so rather than giving you guys just a standard general deck profile, what I want to do actually is take you through my deck building process and how I came to get to my final build, and then afterwards show you some duels with it just to show you how well it sort of worked together and how the ideas really flow. And so let's go ahead and get into it. And so of course, just starting off, I started with a blank canvas. I tried looking around YouTube and for some old decks of Fire Fist, and they all really just seemed like they don't really translate well to the current format. And so that was tough for me. Like all the current profiles I found were kind of terrible. Like they were playing the cards that, we never played back in the old days, because I used to play Fire Fist format. And so it was just really weird for me at first to look at these cards again and see people playing the bad ones. Like they were playing like Wolf and Rhino and stuff. Those cards suck. But I really wanted to see how I can make this archetype competitive. And so the first thing that I thought to myself was like, I needed to get a strong theoretical background for how I want to play. And so the first thing that I thought of was Who's the Beatdown. And so Who's the Beatdown is all about assigning roles to both players in order to determine what you need to do to win. And I made a whole video about that you guys can check out later if you're interested in this theory, but it's all about whether you want to be the beatdown deck or the control deck. The beatdown deck wants to end the game as soon as possible, and the control deck wants to extend the game for as long as possible. And so when it comes to deciding your roles, it usually comes down to power and inevitability. And so I had to ask myself, do Fire Fist have the power to be the beatdown deck? And so again, the beatdown wants to end the game as soon as possible, and so to do that you need a lot of power. You have to have a high ceiling, you have to be able to put damage on board. But can Fire Fist do that? And I don't think they can. I don't think that Fire Fist have enough special summoning. They don't have really big monsters, and so it's really hard for them to put a lot of damage on board. And so I don't think it's a good idea for them to be a beatdown deck. And so then I thought, well, can they be a control deck? And so when it comes to being a control deck, what's most important is having inevitability, but the way you get that is through having an efficient engine. And so I had to think, like, what gives Fire Fist the most efficiency? And this really took me to two separate paths. It came down to having to choose between one of two ways to play the deck. You could play it with level 4 monsters like the 4-axis Fire Fist builds with Bear, Gorilla, Wolf Bark, and those cards, because those are all very strong standalone cards, and they're relatively efficient because you're able to cycle through your Fire Formation cards, and then you have access to rank 4s like Cardinal that can actually shuffle your Fire Fist and Fire Formation cards back into your deck, which gives you a strong recovery option while also helping you clear opponents' boards. So I thought that route is actually pretty efficient. Now the problem is that you need tempo to really do anything. So you have to be able to normal summon, and to use their battle phase effects you need to be able to attack. You have to be able to either deal battle damage or attack over a monster, and that's actually pretty difficult. That's not really something that's guaranteed, and so I wasn't too sold on that yet. So then I thought about, wait, what about +1 Fire Fist? And so if any of you guys were playing back then, +1 Fire Fist was pretty much rank 4 Fire Fist, but you played a lot of cards to give you +1s. And so you would place things like Card D and other just really advantage gaining cards. And you really play in a way to gain the most card advantage, and then you would win with that card advantage. And I thought about that actually, and I think that's actually a pretty good idea. And it's really better in the current day, like current day and age, than it was back then. Because back then, the only hand trap was I think like Valor. But now we have cards like Ash, Ogre, Gamma, Cherries, all these new hand traps that make Card D actually pretty good. And I also think it would be pretty decent with like Scapegoat now, or Pot of Desires. I don't think that was out back then either. And so I think that +1 Fire Fist was actually a relatively good option. But then I also wanted to look at the secondary option, and that was playing the rank 3 engine, or 3-axis Fire Fist. And again, I'm looking for efficiency. And so I actually think the 3-axis engine is very efficient as well, because they can do something going first, unlike the rank 4 cards, and you can cycle through your engine a lot faster because you don't have to use your battle phase to do it. And so if you look at the cards like Leopard, Rooster, and Spirit, they all do things in your main phase 1 and get you to more of your own cards, which is exactly what you want out of a control deck. And it also gives you access to more utility cards because you can cycle through them so quickly with cards like Rooster and Leopard. But the problem though is that it's a 2-card engine, and there are very few strong standalone cards. So like if you draw Leopard in a very simplified game state, it's really not going to do anything. And then you don't have something like Cardinal shuffling your cards back into your deck, and so that means you even only have maybe 3 to 4 times to cycle through your engine with Spirit before you run out of spirits. And that's a problem. And so I just wish there was a better way to get monsters and Fire Fist spells back from the graveyard. And Lion Emperor helps to an extent, but not exactly. And then another issue is that the ceiling is pretty low compared to a lot of other decks this format, but that's something that you could apply to both decks. And so when it comes down to which deck is more efficient, which one would be a better control deck, or a control engine I should say, I really think you can go both ways, but I decided to go with a 3-axis engine because of the fact that you can play on your first turn. And now I guess another option was combining them and playing 3.5 axis Fire Fist, but I didn't think that there was enough synergy between the two sub-engines really. I didn't want to open like Bear plus Rooster or Gorilla plus Leopard, like it just doesn't do anything. And so I didn't want to have those weird combinations of cards, and so I really felt that I had to choose one or the other, and again I went with the rank 3 engine. So the next thing that I had to think about was, do I want to go first or second? And so I thought, do I have a high enough ceiling to play through Disruption? No. Do I have multiple searchable ways of breaking boards? Actually, yes. You have access to Bear, you have access to Gorilla. Those are pretty good ways of breaking boards. However, it's not like you can play 2 Tinkies or summon 2 Bears and then use both Bears' effects. So even though you technically have multiple searchable ways of breaking boards, you don't really have a lot of different ways, like you can't use a lot of them in the same turn. Like the ceiling is still pretty low. And so although yes, this is like a weak yes. The next question I asked myself was, is there searchable defense? The answer to that is no. And then finally, does it create latent advantage? And so what latent advantage means is that you're not creating a lot of advantage in the current game state, but rather you're making advantage for your next couple of turns. And so you're really having really strong follow-up plays. And again, it comes down to having a very efficient engine. It's similar to what Trickstars do, to where a lot of times Trickstars are going to end their turn with Candina still in hand. Like you summon Candina, search, you do your thing, but then you bounce it back to your hand so that you have a follow-up play for your next turn. So on your next turn, you have a +1 with Candina. That's latent advantage. And so I think Fire Fist actually can kind of do the same type of thing, to where you can use your Tinky, search something, and then search another Tinky or something, and then have a play next turn. So I do think Fire Fists are great at creating latent advantage. And so what that leads me to think is that they would be better going first, because if you survive your opponent's initial push, then you can give yourself significant follow-up plays, and then be able to overpower your opponent on your second turn. However, it could also be played going second if you were to add in more breaker cards, or cards that you want to use to break your opponent's board. So things like Raigeki, Dark Hole, Kaijus, Evenly Matched. And then after breaking their board, you'd be able to make a push with cards like Bear and Gorilla to gain more advantage in tempo in a more simplified game state. And so really you can go either way. So let's put a poll in the top right corner of the screen actually. Let me know what you think. Do you think Fire Fist should be going first or going second? But personally, I'm leaning towards going first because of our ability to create latent advantage, and then because we don't have that many ways of going second because the ceiling is so low. And so even though we could add cards to help us with going second, I think because the engine is so weak in it naturally, it wouldn't be a good idea in case you don't draw those extra cards. So like if you go second and you don't draw Kaijus and Dark Holes and stuff, what are you doing? You lose. And so I really don't want to take that risk. So I want to build to go first and really build on those strengths. And so now that we've answered those 2 basic questions of who's going to be the beatdown and then whether or not we want to go first or second, we can sort of develop the basic theory and principles on which we're going to build this deck. And so let's go ahead and move into an actual deck profile. So let's go ahead and move on to an actual deck profile. But again, this isn't going to be a normal profile, but rather I'm going to take you on the journey through the process. And so I don't want to fixate on the results too much because I don't think that's very valuable. But more importantly, I think we want to master the deck building process. That way we can build good decks, because improving your deck building skills leads to building better decks. But having better decks doesn't exactly make you a good deck builder. And so, you know what they say, like, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, feed him for life, or something like that. Let me know how that goes in the comment section. I think that's how it goes, the phrase. But nonetheless, you really want to build on your understanding of theory and deck building process, and it's going to be very valuable in the future as you continue to play this game or continue into other games. Alright, so first let's just start with the critical engine pieces. So these are the things that we just need to play the deck. And so we're going to start with 3 Tenki, 3 Leopard, 3 Tensu, 3 Rooster, and 3 Spirit. These are the cards that make up the core of the 3-axis Fire Fist deck. And then in the extra deck, we're going to have 2 Horse Princes and then 1 Lion Emperor. So as for what these cards do, Tenki is a continuous spell card that you activate to search a Fire Fist monster. Leopard is a monster that searches your fire formation spells and traps. And so these 6 cards allow you to get to all of your other cards. And so you can use Tenki to search your monsters, or you can get to Leopard, which can search Tenki to search your other monsters. And so you have pretty much 6 searchers. Next we have 3 Tensus. Tensu is a double summon, so it does help raise the ceiling a little bit. And all the fire formations, by the way, give you 100 attack to your Beast Warriors. So that's pretty valuable. Next we have 3 Roosters. Rooster has 2 effects, to where when it's special summon, you can add a Fire Fist monster from your deck to your hand. And the second effect is you can send a fire formation from your field to the graveyard to set one from your deck to your field. And so Rooster does a lot for the deck in that it searches your Fire Fist monsters, so you're gaining more advantage, but it also helps you cycle through your fire formations to again give you more advantage. Then the final monster we have are 3 Spirits. And what Spirit does is when normal summon, you special summon a Fire Fist monster from your graveyard, I think it is, or it might be a Beast Warrior or something. You special summon either Leopard or Rooster, and then you can do stuff with them. So you can make Link monsters, you can make Synchros because it's a tuner, or you can make rank 3s. So Spirit's really the card that opens your engine up and gives you a lot of your extra deck utility. And then as for the extra deck monsters, when Horse Prince is Synchro Summon, you special summon a level 3 fire monster from your deck. This doesn't have to be a Fire Fist or anything, it just has to be a fire monster. And then what Lion Emperor does is it requires 2 fire monsters, and then you detach to add a fire monster from your graveyard to your hand. So as you can see, all of these are engine cards. They all move your cards from one place to another. Tenki, Leopard, and Rooster move cards from your deck onto the field, and Rooster also from your deck to your hand. Spirit from your graveyard to your field. Spirit helps you make Horse Prince, which gets them from the deck to the field. Lion Emperor moves them from the graveyard back to the hand. And then finally, Tensu helps get them from hand onto the field. And so you really can encompass all of the zones of the game with these cards. And so that's why they're important to be played. So next we're going to expand on the core to add a little bit more utility. And so with that, I'm going to add in 1 Fire Fist Bear, and then 1 Fire Formation YOKO. And so Bear is like the classic Fire Fist monster. What it does is you send the fire formation from your field to the graveyard to destroy one of your opponent's monsters. And so again, this adds utility. This means that Tenki by itself gets us the Bear, which can out an opponent's monster. Now what else Bear does is when it deals battle damage, you search a fire formation. And so again, this continues the engine. It's utility and it's an engine card. Then the next card that we added is Fire Formation YOKO. Now YOKO is a card that wasn't played in traditional Fire Fist decks, but I think it's actually really good now, especially in this build. And what YOKO does is when it's activated, you discard a Beast Warrior and destroy a face-up card your opponent controls. And so this is really good in this type of deck because you play a lot of Beast Warriors. You have your 3 Leopards, your 3 Roosters, your 3 Spirits, and Bear. Versus if you're playing a rank 4 build like most of the other Fire Fist decks were back in the good old days, you didn't play that many Fire Fist monsters. You mainly just played like Bear and Gorilla. And so you didn't have a lot of things to discard. But now, especially with Rooster's effect, searching monsters, it's very easy to resolve YOKO, I think. Or I think it will be easy to resolve at least. Like theoretically, it's good. I think it just gives the deck more utility because it also means Leopard, along with Tenki, is a 1 card out to an opponent's card. And also this can out face up spell and trap, so you can out floodgates. So I like YOKO a lot. Now we also added to the extra deck. I added in Breaksword, and I added Vulcan the Divine. Breaksword is a rank 3 monster. Never mind, you guys know what Breaksword is, but that's not an old card. But Vulcan the Divine is. And Vulcan the Divine is a level 6 synchro monster. And what it does is when it's synchro summoned, you target 1 face-up card you control, 1 face-up card your opponent controls, and you return both to the hand. And so this allows you to out your opponent's monsters. So this gives you a level 6 synchro that outs your opponent's monsters. And then it also allows you to return your fire formations back to your hand. So you can return something like Tenki back to your hand to play it again, or YOKO to play it again. And so it's a very valuable card actually. And so now let's move into some of the variance cards that we're going to add to the deck. And so variance cards are things that you add outside of your engine to really round your deck out and really solve some of the engine's problems. And I think the biggest problem that Fire Fist have actually is the fact that they don't have defense or any disruption within their own engine. And so that's the issue that I want to solve first. And so with that, I'm going to add 3 Ash Blossoms, 3 strikes, 1 solemn judgment, 2 mirror forces, 2 torrential tributes, and then 3 ghost ogres. And I added all of these in that order, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. And so hand traps are important because you won't win every die roll, and so I want to be sure to make space for a triple Ash. But also Ash is important because it's a fire monster, and that means we can add it back to our hand with Lion Emperor. So Ash actually has a lot of synergy with the deck itself, and so that's why I wanted to be sure that there's space for Ash. Next, I added in the actual trap cards, and I decided to play 8 real traps because I didn't want to play anymore because, again, you're going to go second sometimes and you don't want to open too many. I chose 8 because I felt that I didn't want more than a 30% chance of opening multiple traps going second. And 8 is the lowest number that crosses that threshold. And so if you play 7 traps, there's only a 26.7% chance of opening multiples going second. But when you play 8, that goes up to 33.1%. And so since I'm building to go first anyways, I wanted to sort of hedge in that direction. I didn't want to like cut back and play 7 if I'm planning on going first anyways. But I didn't want to go higher than 8 because sometimes you will go second. But also I do think 7 will be acceptable depending on your deck building preferences. This was just mine. It was pretty arbitrary, but I felt that it made sound mathematical sense. However, I do think that 8 is a hard limit on the number of traps to play because if you play 9, now you have a 10% chance of opening 3 traps going second, which is actually terrible. And 10% is pretty significant, and so I really didn't want to cross that threshold. And now our trap card choice can mitigate this to an extent, but it's still an issue nonetheless. But to mitigate that, that's why I chose cards like Torrential Tribute and Mirror Force, because one, people aren't playing around either of them right now, but also they have the ability to clear our opponent's boards, and so they can be kind of decent going second too. But also this fits back into our Who's the Beatdown theory, because when you're the control deck, you need to play based on card advantage. You want to build on card advantage every single turn ideally, and cards like Mirror Force and Torrential have the ability to give you huge swings in card advantage. And so again, this fits into our theory, and that's why we added them into the deck. That's why this is so important. That's why I wanted to highlight those things at the beginning of the video. And so the next thing when it comes down to the traps is that I wanted to have 14 purely defensive cards. But what I really want to do is have at least a 50% chance of opening multiples when going first. And so that's why I wanted to go all the way up to 14. And so if you play 12, so if we just added in one more, there's a 46% chance of opening multiples. If you go to 13, that's just barely over 50%. But 14 boosts you all the way up to about 56% chance of opening multiple traps going first, or multiple defensive cards going first, and I really like that actually. But the caveat is that you even go up to nearly 90% odds of opening one trap, or defensive card I should say. And so I really like having like that 55% chance of opening multiples and 90% chance of opening one. So, and again, that's so important because the deck cannot generate defense on its own, so you have to draw into it. But again, I could also see 13 being okay because you still have above 50% chance of seeing multiples, and you could cut maybe one Ghost Ogre to avoid there being too many hard once per turn 3-ofs. But again, that's just preference. I like playing the extra 3-of to slightly lower the variance, which again we mentioned in the deck building theory video. I'll put a link to that in the top right corner of the screen if you're interested in that as well. But that's something that could be changed. Alright, so next we need to add in some extenders, because every deck needs extenders, and I honestly couldn't think of very many good extenders for a Fire Fist deck. There are not that many ways to special summon them, and because of Spirit's restrictions and Horse Prince's restrictions, it can be difficult to really do much else. And so I felt that Scapegoat was probably the best choice because it allows me to again go with that same theory of surviving my first turn, or my opponent's first turn, and having a really strong second turn push, and Scapegoat really contributes to that, and it really gives you a lot of extra deck options, and we have so much extra deck space. So I felt that Scapegoat was a pretty good fit here. So next I wanted to add in some breakers, because again I want to be able to go second. But however, again, I'm building to go first, and so I didn't just want cards that are good going second like Raigeki and Dark Hole and stuff. I wanted things that could be good going first or second, so I wanted some versatility in these spots. And so I went with adding Book of Moon and 2 Cosmic Cyclones, because these are all traps if you go first, but if you go second, they help you deal with your opponent's board. They're very good at going against established boards, and I like that about them. And then finally, we had 3 more slots left in the deck, and so we pretty much answered all of the other questions, we filled all the other roles, and so now the only thing left are deck building requirements. So these are cards that are necessary for the deck to work optimally, or for it to be as consistent as you want. And so common options include like Upstart, Duality, Card of Demise, Pot of Desires, those type of cards. And I think that Desires is probably ideal in this case because it gives us the most card advantage, and then it doesn't have any restrictions like something such as Duality or Card of Demise does. But now instead of these, we could also add more cards to other categories. Like I think adding in like Raigeki or Dark Hole or some Kaijus would also be fine. Maybe a bomb card like Soul Charge or Rekindling would be nice. I thought Rekindling was actually a really good idea, but it just comes down to space really. So now with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the extra deck. And so again, the only things that we really need are cards for Scapegoat at this point. There are not very many good rank 3s, and there's not that many synchros that we can summon with Spirit. And so again, we just need to add some Link monsters. And so I added Link Karibo, Proxy Dragon, Mrs. Radiant, Ib, Underclock Taker, Ningirsu, Borreload, Skull Dread. I think those are all necessary. And the next cards were Topologic Bomber Dragon and Supreme King Starving Venom. Topologic Bomber Dragon was really kind of like, oh, I have like 13 extra deck cards. What's something that I can summon off a Scapegoat? And Topologic Bomber Dragon was just sort of what came to mind. I guess it can help you do a little bit of damage if you attack with it. You can't really activate the other effect where you special summon to its link point, so it's kind of iffy. And if you guys have any other better suggestions, let me know in the comment section, because yeah, this card's kind of but whatever. And then finally, the Supreme King Starving Venom was something that I added actually a little bit later, but I'm just gonna include it now. So there's a spicy tech card that really reminded me to play this card, and so we'll get to that later, real soon though. So let's go ahead and move on to the side deck. And so the first cards that I want to add on the side are Lancea, Barrier, and Kaijus. These cover the majority of your matchups. So Lancea covers anything that banishes from the graveyard, like Lightsworn zombies. It covers dinos. It covers Invoked. And you have Barrier, which is good against also Invoked, Pendulum, ABCs. And then you have Kaijus, which are generally just good going second. And the thing about Kaijus is that you can actually make Vulcan with Spirit to bounce it back to your hand and then Kaiju your opponent again. And so Kaijus actually have really good synergy with this deck. Now, the issue with Kaijus is that they actually have pretty high attack, and so I went with 3 Gameciel because that's what is easiest to attack over. I felt that Kumongus having 2400 being larger than most of the things that you naturally have access to within your engine might be a problem, and so I didn't want to be forced to use Bear or YOKO just to out a Kaiju. That kind of sucks, and so I felt that these cards were necessary. These are definitely things that you had to play. The next couple of cards that I added were the spicy ones, and so I added 3 Leonidas and then 1 Performapal Minotaurus. And I'm a huge fan of this actually because Leonidas is one good against Trickstars. And so it was between this and Chaos Hunter actually at first, because Chaos Hunter is also good against Trickstars, but this is really good against Trickstars, but it's also really good against the FTK. And this is why I play the Starving Venom, because I can actually search Minotaurus off of Tinky and then summon Minotaurus with the Leonidas to make Starving Venom, copy my opponent's Nightingale, and then kill them with Starving Venom. And so this actually solves one of the issues of Fire Fist having such a low ceiling, not being able to put damage on board. So I actually really like this inclusion. But there's still 2 more cards to add to the side deck, and so I wasn't quite sure at first, but I felt that a Floodgate would probably be a good idea. And so I went to Rivalry of the Warlords, since most of our monsters are Beast Warrior. And so we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you think about Rivalry of Warlords. I think it's good in most matchups. Like Invoked can't really deal with it because Mechaba is a machine, Alistair is a spellcaster. If you look at Pendulums, Electromite is psychic. Their monsters are spellcaster. And I'm sure it hurts other decks too. So I just felt it was a good general option, a good Floodgate that doesn't hurt me. Probably hurts everybody else. And so this is what I came up with off of pure theory. I think it's a really solid list, but I actually want to get some games in. And because yesterday's video was on the Pendulum FTK, I wanted to get some games in against the FTK. So let's actually go take a look at that. So we built this deck. Let's see it in action. And so game 1, we open up with pretty much our combo. We have a Tanky, 2 Fire Fist monsters, then we have Scapegoat, Torrential Tribute. And so we're going to go through our standard combo of pretty much whenever you have 2 two of your engine monsters, you're going to be able to go through this combo and summon Horse Prince, and then you want to special summon Rooster from your deck, which searches you another monster. Now, he did have a Ghost Ogre, and he Ghost Ogred the Horse Prince. I probably would have Ghost Ogred the Spirit, but I think he just didn't know what to do. Like, I think when you see Fire Fist play, you're just like, wait, what? And you don't think of what to actually stop. So I think it sort of hit him when he's like, oh shit, Horse Prince is pretty big, let's out that. But nonetheless, the only defense I really have is Torrential Tribute, so I really have to be careful with it, and I want to save it for his Pendulum summon, and so that's really what I'm trying to do. However, he does play around it a little bit, and I guess he was reading on like a Solemn Strike, so he tried to do some battle damage by attacking before I can use my Torrential Tribute. But nonetheless, in his main phase 2, he goes for the Pendulum summon, which Torrential Tribute clears, and then Scapegoat in the end phase gives me a lot of board presence. So next on my turn, I still only have this one strike, but I'm thinking I want some more defense, so I go into Skull Deep, and then Skull Deep draws me into a second strike and a Mirror Force, and then I'm able to still have the Spirit for a follow-up play. And so I felt really strong about this. If my opponent had a real back row, they probably would have used it by now. They probably wouldn't have let like Skull Deep ride, to be honest. And so I'm pretty sure that that's just like a bluff. Like, it's probably like a Duelist Alliance or a Pendulum Call or something stupid. So then on his turn, he plays a Pendulum Call, so I guess like it wasn't the card that was set. And then I still just have the Solemn Strike for it. And so at that point, there's really nothing he can do. Like, Pendulum Summon didn't work, no cards in hand, and then he scoops because I have game this turn. So then we're going to go into game 2. And so game 2, my opponent actually draws pretty ridiculous now that I get a chance to look at it. Like double Astro, Dragon Shrine, Instant, and Duels Alliance. Whew. That's a good hand, but fortunately we have Leonidas, and so that gives us some sort of way to not die. And I think that's really all you can ask for against the FDK. Like, I don't think any singular hand trap stops them if they open good enough. And this is definitely like them opening good enough. And so he actually makes a really good play by not using Electromite pre-Pendulum Summon. I guess he tried to get the read on maybe if I have Ash Blossom, or I'm sorry, Ghost Ogre. And so he knows that I don't have Ghost Ogre by not using Electromite. And then he knows that I also don't have Ash Blossom too, because I would have stopped like the Pendulum Call. And even if I did stop Pendulum Call, he still had enough cards in hand to play through it. And now at this point, he makes another good play because he doesn't link before using Starving Venom's effect, but rather he uses Starving Venom to copy the Nightingale while it's on the field. So if I have an answer to it, he's still at a point within his combo string to where he can make a lot of other plays. Like, he has options. So if I do anything to stop this first Venom, like if I Ogre it or if I Veiler it or do whatever, he still has a lot of options. And so I think he made a really good play here. And I do have Leonidas again, which does save me for my turn. But he's still able to play afterwards. And I think one thing that he could have done differently was he actually could have used his Electromite to destroy his Starving Venom and do pretty much the exact same play to add the Astrograph back to hand. But if he had done that, he would have had space on his board to special summon Astrograph. And then at that case, he could have linked with the Absolute Dragon to make Metaltron, I think. And then that would have allowed him to end on Absolute Tornado Dragon rather than ending with the Starving Venom. And so I can sort of see why you might want to leave Starving Venom on board, because it gives you flexibility next turn. It's something your opponent has to deal with, or you just kill them. But it might have been better for him to end on more negations. Now for me, my 6th card is an Ash Blossom. That actually kind of sucks. But we're going to go ahead and play Pot of Desires and see what we get. And we draw into a Tensu. Tensu gets Leopard, which allows me to search YOKO, which I can use to actually bait the Tornado Dragon. And now that I can do that, I can just activate Tinky to search Minotaurus, summon Venom. Venom can copy his Nightingale, and then I can actually just kill him. And so it's exactly the reason why I played those cards. It worked. And now, my opponent wasn't going to let me just 2-0 him with Fire Fist, so he wanted to run it back. I was happy to oblige him, so we did do another game. This was a sided game, and I got to go first. And so I actually opened up pretty strong, I think. And so I opened up with a combo once again. If you just have 2 engine pieces that aren't the same, obviously, then you can make the combo work. And so I started with Leopard and Tensu. That ends with Horse Prince, special summon Rooster. Rooster searches me a Spirit. And then Rooster can give me another Tinky, so I can search another monster on my next turn. So I can search Bear if I need it, or I can search Leopard to get YOKO if I need it. And now he actually gets me good. He activates a Cerberus, and I'm just so tempted to Ash it because it's like it leaves them with like a rank 4, or not a rank 4, but a scale 4, so that's so awkward for them, and it's just like such good Ash bait. I fell for it because he actually had Pin Call and Dark Worm, which is much more important to Ash. Like, both of those are more important to Ash than Cerberus. And so he got me good, but I do have the barrier, And this was actually an interesting technical play moment, I think, because I could have barriered Dark Worm's effect in the graveyard so he couldn't special summon it at all. Or you could do what I do, and that's barrier the on-field effect. And I thought very long and hard about this, actually, because I figured that I wanted to... Or I felt that because I don't have enough to do game next turn, like there's no way I have game with this board. And so since I don't have game, I want to do what I can to make sure he has a weaker follow-up play because he still has 5 cards in hand. And so I wanted to get Dark Worm out of the graveyard so that on his next turn, he doesn't have Dark Worm in the graveyard to sort of deal with. But this was actually a mistake because this does allow him to just attack over my Rooster, summon a monster, make a Tornado Dragon, which forces my strike as well. And now I just have like pretty much no more defense. Versus if it were in the graveyard, I would have my strike to save for this next turn, and then that would allow me to at least have more defense on his turn. And so what I do is I Tinky for Bear to get me another fire formation. I go into YOKO, and then afterwards in main phase 2, I go into Lion Emperor to add Ash back to my hand. So I still have Ghost Ogre, Ash Blossom, and Leonidas. So I still have kind of like 2 lines of defense, and if he goes for the FDK, I have Leonidas, so I just won't die. But I just don't think it was enough. And again, I Ash Blossom the Cerberus because I know he doesn't have Pin Call again, and again, this leaves a level 4 in his scales. But he is able to clear it from his scales and then pretty much go off because of having Astrograph. And he can make a second Electromite. And then at this point I have no defense, and he just has like tons of resources. He has Astrograph. He has access to everything that he needs to play at the optimal level. And he just goes off at this point. Like he kills me. So he goes into Absolute Dragon to make Metaltron actually before doing anything else. And I thought this was a really good play because I do have Leonidas. And so if he had not made the Vortex Dragon first, and I had tried to use Leonidas, I would have survived. I probably would have won this game. But because he made that Vortex Dragon first, he was able to negate any of my hand traps. So if I had like even if it wasn't a Leonidas, like even if I hadn't used my Ogre, for example, and I was holding Ogre for his Starving Venom or anything else that I could have had, or even if that back row was maybe a Mirror Force, I mean, he knows it's not a Mirror Force, but if it was, making the Vortex first gave him a way to play through whatever I could have possibly had to ensure that he had game. And so I felt that my opponent played really well this game. I think that my technical play was a little bit suspect, but his was very good. So take that as you will. I thought this was a very interesting game, a very exciting one. And so after this and some of our other games, I did make some changes to the deck. And so I'm just going to show you guys the final list. And the only changes that I made were adding a second Lion Emperor and then Doolittle Chimera to the extra deck. And it's actually funny because one of the people who suggested Fire Fist said, like, they specifically said do something with Doolittle Chimera, and I completely forgot about it. And then when I was playing with the deck, I was like, wait, I'm ending with Horse Prince Rooster. If I can stop my opponent, I can't do anything because there's a Horse Prince in my extra monster zone. So I have to get rid of that somehow. And the way to get rid of that is Doolittle Chimera. Like, at first it was just Underclock Taker, that sucked, but Doolittle Chimera is actually way better. And so I'm glad that that person suggested it because it worked out pretty well, and I think it's a good addition to the deck. It also has that same synergy with Ghost Reaper, or I'm sorry, Ash Blossom, to where if it gets destroyed, you can add Ash back to your hand, or you can add Spirit back to your hand, or anything back to your hand. And that also fixes some of your efficiency issues. And so Doolittle Chimera is actually a huge boost to the deck. I like that a whole lot. It makes your follow-up play 10 times better. Now the second Lion Emperor, that's important because sometimes you just don't need to keep special summoning from your deck with Horse Prince. So like that was my original plan. Like you make the first Horse Prince and Rooster, then you make a second Horse Prince and Rooster. At that point you've gone through most of your engine. But you can also just use Lion Emperor to do the same thing. And so you can, instead of doing Horse Prince and Rooster, you can do Lion Emperor, search Ash back, or add Ash back to your hand, or add Spirit back to your hand, or however you want to do things. And so I really felt that the second one did come up enough for me to play it. And so guys, this is the final list of Fire Fist that I came up with. Thank you guys for commenting on the last video. Thank you so much for suggesting it. Shout out especially to Ryo and DTH Phoenix Blazer for suggesting Fire Fist. I thought this was a really fun exercise, a really fun video for me to make. And so as for tomorrow's video, the prompt is to be inspired by conversations around me. And so if you guys would please help me come up with another topic for tomorrow, just have some conversations down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this video, or just suggest like random topics for tomorrow. Some of the ones that have been lingering from like the first day and yesterday's video are like World Chalice. Maybe that's something you guys want to see. I also think that Crystal Beast had a couple likes down in the comment section of yesterday's video, so that's something that I can do for tomorrow maybe. So just let me know what you guys want to see actually, and I'll try to bring it to you by tomorrow. Now something else that I should probably start doing is not making these videos so damn long, because for daily videos, these being like 20 minutes each is taking a long time to like edit and render and export and all that crap. And so this is actually pretty tough. I didn't think daily uploads would be as hard as they are. So I have a lot more respect for guys like Simo and House of Champs. Those guys are like going in Team Samurai. A lot of other YouTubers doing daily content, and this is hard. This is only like my 3rd or 4th day of doing it. It hadn't even been a week. So I think I'm going to try to make the next couple of videos maybe a little bit shorter. I think it's going to help a little bit. And so I hope I can still pack as much value into them, even though they're shorter. Because I think this was actually a really good one. I felt that going through the deck building process was very valuable. It's something that people would maybe hopefully like to see. And so let me know if you do like to see it down in the comment section below. Let me know if I should like cut stuff out of these videos to make them shorter, or keep the long videos. They're really helpful. So let me know down in the comment section below what you think. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.